I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about trauma and how this impacts us if we're trying to conceive. And really, this is something that we see regularly. I know when I was diagnosed with POI at 28, I actually didn't even think it was traumatic. I was like, okay, great. We need to go to donor eggs. And I know looking back that obviously that's a very traumatic diagnosis. And even if you haven't been diagnosed with POI, any kind of infertility diagnosis can be traumatic. So trauma from infertility as well as past trauma, we're going to be talking about how to identify it, how to address it, and how to move through it. So excited for you to listen to this episode. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. Hey there. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers. And really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FABfertile.com and click on book a free call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FABfertile.com, and click on book a free call. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our FabFertile couples coaching program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light, while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. So I got to say I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby.
I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Naomi Woolfson to the podcast, and we're digging into how to deal with trauma when you are trying to conceive. Naomi Woolfson is the founder of Embrace Fertility, offering inspiration, support, and community to women and their partners who are going through infertility. So thanks so much for listening. I'm really so thankful that you are here. Make sure you hit subscribe, and if you know someone else who's on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Naomi, excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah. So we're today going to be talking about trauma in a minute, but let's, if you could share your own journey as to how you came to do this work.
Yeah, so we went through infertility ourselves. So I was trying to conceive for almost 4 years. We ended up going through 4 rounds of treatment, and it was after the first round of treatment that I was having panic attacks. I was suffering from anxiety and depression, and my clinic sent me on an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course. That just changed everything for me, because then I learned that it wasn't, I kept telling myself, I was like, as soon as I get pregnant, then I'll be fine, then the anxiety will stop, then all this will go away. Through that course, I learned that getting pregnant wasn't the only way to feel better. I could feel better now by understanding how it was my thoughts about infertility and mainly the treatment that we were going through as well that were causing the anxiety. And I got absolutely fascinated in this. So I left my career in design and retrained as a therapist, and Embrace Fertility was born. And then ended up having both my kids naturally after going through 4 rounds of treatment, had both of them naturally.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a progressive clinic that's offering 8 weeks of a mind-body program. So that was
yeah, we was actually with the NHS. I don't know if they still offer that, but it was it happened to just be linked to that part of the hospital. And they were like, oh yeah, go and see Clara. And yeah, so amazing. I was like, if every clinic could offer that, but yeah, I don't know if it's still part of their offering.
Okay. Yes. So today we're going to be talking about mental emotional trauma as part of our Fab Fertile couples coaching program. We're looking at reducing the stressors. So we're looking at food sensitivities, gut infections, environmental toxins, and mental emotional stress. So you can do the perfect diet, get the supplement, use the testing to develop the supplement protocol and reduce all those environmental toxins. So switching out your personal cleaners and your personal products, your cleaning chemicals, all of that. But if you haven't addressed the mental emotional side of this, that is a huge healing opportunity that's being missed. And a lot of people that come to me are like type A's. Let's go do the functional side of things. And our program is a mind, body, spirit approach. Missing out on the mental health or the mental emotional side of this is a thing a theme we keep seeing coming up. And that's why it's a mind, body, spirit side of things. So I really wanted to dig into trauma and what we can do to release trauma. And specifically for in this case, it's either situational to infertility, or maybe it's past trauma as well. So let's talk about what exactly constitutes trauma?
Yeah, so trauma can be it can be physical or psychological. So when we talk about trauma in terms of physical, would be where the body has been impacted by something, so detrimental amount to the body. So then the body is having to obviously try and heal itself and mend itself. So that could be through physical impact, like an accident or burns or something. So it would be physical. And then psychological is where there has been damage to the mind, when the mind cannot cope with the amount of stress that it's trying to process in the moment. So we all experience stress, with this day-to-day stress, or we might have higher peaks of stress. But we would label it as trauma when the mind cannot process what is going on in that moment. So then exhibits trauma as a way to try and cope, to try and process the information that it's bringing in, or the stimulus that it's taking in. So it might view something traumatic or experience something traumatic, both physically and emotionally, and then your body is trying to cope with it.
Yeah. And then, okay, so physical or psychological. I think the physical one we get, and the post-traumatic stress we may get, and we're going to dig more into this, because sometimes, like, I know when I was going through and I had that diagnosis of premature ovarian failure or premature ovarian insufficiency, I actually wouldn't even have said I was stressed. I wouldn't even have said it was trauma. I had reclassified this whole thing as, oh, this is the way I have to go. I had a mindset shift, but obviously that diagnosis is very traumatic, being able to deal with those emotions. So what does that trauma do to the body?
So when our body has experienced something traumatic, and I like to point out as well that something is traumatic if a person perceives it as traumatic. So every different person could experience the same thing, and some people may find it traumatic and stressful, and some people might not. But it's when we take something on, so our body then is alerting us to the fact that our body is in danger, or we are in danger. So our stress levels will go up, our body will be flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, and trying to reset itself, but can't. So this is where PTSD will come in, because your body is in this state of hypervigilance and is being triggered repeatedly. And sometimes it can be the tiniest triggers will come up. So with infertility, there's a new study that was done by the Spalding University that actually tested infertility patients, and 50% of them actually met the official criteria for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because the outcomes could be being in shock, denial, or disbelief, feeling angry, irritable, mood swings, extreme sadness or hopelessness, confusion or difficulty concentrating, anxiety and fear, withdrawing yourself from others, trouble sleeping or nightmares, feeling easily startled, suffering from fatigue, or having physical sensations like a racing heart, aches and pains, and muscle tension. So all of these things can be signs of trauma. And a lot of clients, when they're going through infertility, you're not just dealing with the physical onslaught of a medical diagnosis, investigations and surgery that can be very invasive. You're also dealing with the fact that your life doesn't look like you thought it was going to look like. So even though infertility isn't life-threatening, it does threaten your life. It threatens how you thought your life was going to be. And that can be very traumatic, that you're trying to process how this works and how you now fit into this new model of what you thought your life was going to look like. And the uncertainty as well can be a trigger. So it can get to the point that people are going into a treatment cycle and then will be triggering anxiety. So that's what happened to me. I had a failed cycle, and then we went to go back into the next cycle. The idea of sort of starting from scratch again was triggering panic attacks. And it's whenever even thinking about getting on the particular bus to go up to the hospital was triggering panic attacks in me.
As you say, keep doing the same thing that's triggering things. So, and the uncertainty, and then being able, you have this certain plan for your life. I certainly had that. I was getting married at 25, wanted to have my kids at 28. And then, wait a minute, what's with this diagnosis? And it sort of takes you off course. And so some of those signs there, like you're talking about, shock, denial, disbelief, sadness, confusion, anxiety, fear, like the sleeping side of things, the panic, anxiety.
Yeah, so something that I've really noticed is I posted yesterday, I wrote a post saying, if you really wanted to buy like a beautiful house, beautiful 3-bed house with a garden, if it got to the stage that whenever you saw a photograph of that house, or you walked past that type of house, if you then felt very anxious and extremely upset because you didn't have that house, that's kind of where it gets to with infertility, that people can't even talk about, they can't be around people who are pregnant or people with newborns because it is such a trigger. And that's trauma. That's not normal. That if there's something you really desire, they're not having it, if it's causing such a trigger, that can be a sign of trauma, because your body is then telling you the thing you want then kind of becomes a threat to your system. So you will see a pregnant person, your body has learned that in the past has been upsetting for you. Therefore, seeing a pregnant person is not a safe thing to do. So will then bring on anxiety to try and steer you away from this person and to protect you from the upset. And it's like your system gets kind of rewired in the wrong way. So then you're kind of turning away from the thing that you most want. And yeah, that obviously really isn't helpful to us on a conscious, subconscious or energetic level if we're turning away from the thing that we most desire.
Yeah. And we see this all the time coaching couples. It's even seeing families. If you're dealing with secondary infertility, a family can be triggering. Seeing obviously pregnant women or pregnant women, pregnant bellies, even looking at baby clothes, like and it's everywhere. And people asking you, when are you going to have a child? We did do an episode on triggers. Definitely check out the episode on Get Pregnant Naturally there with infertility triggers and what to do with that. So why is it so important to address the trauma when you're trying to conceive?
Well, the biggest reason is because you're putting your body under a huge amount of, if your body's experiencing chronic ongoing stress, it's so bad for your well-being, both your physical well-being and your mental well-being, and can have so many knock-on impact. And that then can have a negative impact to your fertility. So first off, you want to deal with the trauma for your own happiness, your own sake. But also, if you are pursuing pregnancy, looking to conceive, you want your body to be in the optimum state of wellness, both physical and mental. So the impact when you are under chronic stress can have a negative impact on fertility. So the biggest one is just loss of libido. And so obviously you shouldn't need to explain why that's an issue. Extreme stress can prevent or delay ovulation. You can end up turning to coping strategies. So if you're dealing, especially with post-traumatic stress disorder, you can try and cope with that by turning to having a dysfunctional relationship with food, smoking, drink, drugs, which obviously all can have an adverse effect on the quality of both eggs and sperm. Your immune system is weakened when you're under chronic stress. Your whole body is kind of working constantly to try and maintain balance. And because it's out of balance, your immune system is weakened. And then you could experience knock-on health issues that could impact fertility. So dietary problems, blood sugar level problems. A massive one is more couples actually quit or don't commence treatment due to emotional distress rather than physical prognosis or financial constraints. So that means that people walking around who weren't told, oh, you should stop treatment now, you should stop trying to conceive because it's just not going to happen, but because the emotional distress was just too much. So by understanding what you can do to help your body and to reduce the stress and to reduce any trauma, then you're helping yourself to build up that resilience so you can continue for longer. Knock-on impact of your relationships, obviously if you're under stress, there's strain on your relationships as well, and then you may experience, if you've got ongoing chronic stress, that's when it can then turn into anxiety and turn into panic attacks. So generally that will be a build-up of stress rather than just it may feel like they're coming out of nowhere, but actually when you trace it back, you may see there has been a build-up of stress, and the panic attacks or the anxiety is like the tip of the iceberg in your body and mind really telling you, you need to be doing something about this now.
Yeah, and even getting the diagnosis of infertility, there's something going on, can be traumatic in itself. And then sometimes if a doctor is telling you this is the only, an RE, perhaps, well-educated practitioner telling you this is the only way this is going to happen, or maybe it's, only thing that's going to work for you is donor eggs, or you're going to struggle, you will need IVF. Those sort of conversations can be traumatizing. On the functional side of things, we know that, that's not the case. But hearing those words from a professional can be really kind of embedded in your subconscious.
It could also be if you receive a diagnosis when you're quite young. So I was diagnosed when I was 19 with endometriosis and told very, very bluntly by a guy with no bedside manner whatsoever, the likelihood of me, if I ever wanted children, it would probably be through IVF. And so I, heard that at 19 and obviously had never heard of this weird endometriosis, but, couldn't even pronounce it for the first year. And really didn't really understand what was going on, but was was told that. So obviously then when we did start trying to conceive, already had that there in my mind of this may be an issue. And I was sort of telling myself, no, definitely be fine, was pregnant straight away. But obviously I had those beliefs as well, that it was like, oh, this could be I remember telling my partner before we got married, sort of announcing, or by the way, it may be an issue if we wanted to have kids. And so it was all sort of there underlying on the surface of like an underlying stressor, was just there for years and years before it actually became an issue.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Same. Well, mine was like, here's a diagnosis. Here's the IVF brochure, off you go. And I didn't even get a second opinion and thought there was nothing else I could do. And okay, here I go. Here's my path. So let's dig into, how does anger fit in with trauma?
So anger, when we're experiencing trauma, it can be very similar to the stages of grief that you can be going through. So there can be 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it can be the same with trauma, that if we're dealing with something traumatic, especially if you've been told, having children naturally may not be possible for you. If that's perceived as a traumatic, experience, which it can be for a lot of people, you can go through these stages of just being complete denial, then anger, bargaining, before then really processing and getting to the sadness of that, and maybe feeling depressed over that, and coming out through to acceptance. So anger can be a way of protecting ourselves from more uncomfortable and difficult emotions that on the surface, and we all notice this as well, if there's something bothering us, so maybe we're a bit stressed about an upcoming work meeting, and it will just be there, and then our partner will do something, this tiny little thing, and we will just burst out in anger at them, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with what they've done, but it's this underlying anxiety, this stress that we have about another issue. So if you have a chronic stressor, chronic trauma in your system, then it's like all your emotions can be heightened and just sort of there under the surface. Then smaller things can trigger you, even if it's not directly related.
Yeah, this was me for years, where the first response was being pissed off and angry. And, then being able, like you're saying, being able to oh, wait a minute, I'm not actually angry at that. I'm upset about something else. And actually in the moment coaching my own self, which is always fun, but being able to see, what it is I'm really upset about at this point, and thinking about it, either talking about it with someone or understanding it's not actually your partner that you're ticked off with, or the situation that's something else that you're trying to. And for me, back to some of those coping mechanisms, I was just a wild shopper. I shopped and shopped and shopped. I just love shopping. And I still for me, I'm I'd be in there was I remember years ago, there was a mall in my area that I still think of this. It's it's horrible. I know why I'm laughing, but there was a mall, and the roof collapsed, and there was one woman, just a handful, it was a very small mall, a handful of people were in there, and one woman was killed. And I'm and it was at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. And I'm damn, I just thought cause I'd find myself going to the mall for oh, it's been a stressful day, I need to go shopping, and I'd buy all this garbage that I didn't need. I thought I needed it. I was I need all this stuff that I need. I wanted to justify it. And I thought, oh my goodness, that could have been me walking around the mall, not really knowing what I was there for. And so it is something for me, a trigger. If I'm feeling I want to escape something, I will. We've got online shopping right now. I definitely will know that for me, it's self-care and pull back, and where are you out of alignment? You haven't meditated and all those things. But for years, I was just numbing that with shopping, and then just irritable and cranky. And as I dealt with food sensitivities and my chronic stress issues, those things started to go away. But it's interesting how we cope.
I think everyone has a different way we each have a way of coping, even if we don't realize that it's a way of coping. So like you said, you were I enjoy shopping. It makes me feel better. And it wasn't until you sort of had that realization then of oh, I'm doing this more than is maybe good for me. So I found with everyone, we will have a default coping mechanism that we've learned earlier in life. And then when it comes to infertility, we will pick up that same coping mechanism, because that's, we're in the past, this has helped me deal with stress, this has helped me feel better. But obviously, because infertility is different, either up the amount that we drink, that we shop, that we consume, whatever it is that we consume to try and feel better. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's about finding, especially then when you're, obviously you want your lifestyle to be enhancing your fertility and supporting your fertility rather than having, so like with drinking or smoking or over or under eating or any of the things that can have a detrimental impact. You obviously, it's like you're suddenly like, well, hang on a minute, like drinking was my coping. Now you're saying I can't do that. Oh, eating was my comfort. Now you're saying I need to lose weight, or now I need to put on weight, or whichever way. So yeah, it's about finding a way that can help you deal with the emotions. So instead of trying to hide them, so that's why I called my business Embrace Fertility, because it's about embracing all that infertility brings to the table and embracing the emotions of it and embracing what you have to go through in order to process it and like move through the healing that you need to do from any trauma and stress that you've experienced from it. So something I talk about a lot is post-traumatic growth, which is where, all of us in our lives will experience conflict, loss, bereavement, ill health. And there's this beautiful post-traumatic growth that can come from these experiences where we learn from them. And there's like this silver lining to what we've been through. There's a beautiful book I'd recommend, Positive Psychology for Overcoming Depression by Miriam Akhtar. And she talks about, she studied post-traumatic growth and interviewed lots and lots of people who've been through very traumatic experience. And she found that people, after they'd been through this, I'll give a quote from her book, they reported feeling stronger, feeling better. If I can get through this, I can get through anything. Feeling more alive, more authentic, more open to what life has to offer, increased confidence, stronger relationships, increased feelings of love, empathy and compassion, sense of community, and a greater sense of meaning in life, and a fresh sense of appreciation for all the good in one's life. And this is something I can really relate to, because when I was in sort of the thick of infertility, I just couldn't see my way out of it at all, and it was so horrible, and I was so in it, and I really thought that I would only feel better once I was pregnant, or once I actually had my baby, sort of out the other side. And actually, when I started learning about the mind-body link and learning about how to work with my mind rather than being controlled by my mind, controlled by anxiety, I got to the point that I was actually felt like I reached this stage of this post-traumatic growth while still going through infertility, that I felt stronger, I felt resilient, I felt like no matter what is thrown at me, I know that I'll be able to deal with it, because I've now dealt with 3 failed cycles. I can go into the next one feeling resilient, feeling strong, knowing that I have these techniques that are really gonna support me and hold me up. And this support team that's gonna hold me up, rather than desperately needing the positive result to then be what allowed me to feel good, to feel happy, to feel content.
Yeah, I interviewed Dr. Maria Rothenberger on the podcast talking about lessons learned, and she's talked about post-traumatic growth. I think she did her doctorate on it. And it was a fascinating conversation. So definitely, to listeners, to definitely check that out with Dr. Maria Rothenberger. But yeah, it can be hard when you're in the middle of a struggle and wait a minute, what are the lessons? And you want to slap the person when they're saying that. But
it's generally quite a way after will be then when people kind of will look back and go, oh, okay. And that may be, months or even years down the line, but it's something that happens organically. It's not like you can go, right, we're gonna be grateful today for infertility. It's more like an organic, over time, things kind of develop and blossom.
It's interesting, because I always think I'm I walk quickly, I do things fairly quickly, I think I'm like really fast, but as I see how things pan out, turns out I'm really slow. It takes me a long time to get. I may be acting quickly, but slow to process a lot of this stuff as you look back and go, oh my goodness, what the heck was I doing? Yeah. So how do we release trauma?
Okay. So this is where it gets really interesting. So basically, to release trauma from the body, what we want to do is be telling your mind that it's safe for it to switch off your stress response. So when you're in stress response, your body is basically going danger, 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 so that you take action, so that you change where you physically are or where you mentally are. And to be able to do that, there are many different ways, but one of the simplest tools is to literally to embrace it, because a lot of the time we'll be holding holding stuff back and holding it in and not allowing ourselves. It's like we learn when we're a kid, oh, actually, no, like, don't cry, don't cry, you're okay, stick a happy face on. And so we don't allow ourselves to cry, whereas actually crying is designed to help us release emotions, which is why a kid can, fall splat on the pavement, really hurt themselves, and they will scream and they will cry for, 2 or 3 minutes, and they're not just releasing the physical pain and the shock of the scenario, but they're releasing all of the emotions that came with that experience. And that's why then, 3 minutes later, they're absolutely fine. They carry on with their day. They're not still 3 hours later going, oh my God, and then I fell on the pavement. It was so embarrassing. They're just, it's gone. It's out of their system. They might have a bruise, but they're not holding on to that experience. So crying is a fantastic way. Journaling is amazing. So just writing just how you feel and just allowing just the words to pour out onto the page. Other ways are to physically move your body. So our body can store emotions, can store trauma physically within our body. So by moving your body, be that through yoga, through dance. So part of the Embrace Fertility method, the course I ran, we actually do a choir dance session, which is amazing. And it's a way of connecting deeply with your body in order to release emotions and trauma trapped in your body. And you're going to do this. You just stick on a piece of music and just dance like nobody is watching. Just allow yourself to tune in with the music and allow your body to move in whatever way it needs to do. And shape, this is a great one as well. So animals there's an amazing video on YouTube, I'll send you the link so you can put it in the notes, of a polar bear that they want to add a tracking device to it so they can monitor how many polar bears there are left. So they obviously shoot it with a tranquilizer gun, and they put they check its health and everything, and they put this little chip in. And then when it comes to, it gets up and it's violently shaking, and it looks like it's having a fit, and it is, it's properly shaking. And this is its way of dealing with the trauma of what just happened. Animals do this in the wild. So like a gazelle would be chased by a lion, and then when it realizes that it's safe, it will shake. And it will shake and it will shake and it will shake, and then it will go on with its day and be eating grass, because the shaking gets the trauma physically out of this animal's body. So a gazelle doesn't spend its whole day going, oh my God, I know there are lions around here. Like, I know there were lions yesterday. It's going to be lions. They don't have to think about it. They're just off doing their own thing. So shaking is a fantastic thing. So just getting up and literally shaking every body part and just really just thinking about release any, because we know that tension in our body can be where we're holding our body in a way that isn't ergonomic or good for us, but also emotionally we will be, if we're feeling stressed or tense, our shoulders can be up, we can feel that tension in our body. So moving it helps to release it and remove it.
It's back to crying. So what if we can't cry?
So if we can't cry, and this is something that happens for a lot of people as well, is to get in touch with other ways that allow you to express emotion. So it could be, watching a film that really touches you emotionally. It could be listening to music, which really just like touches you inside and allows you to connect with other emotions. So you might not be thinking about thinking about infertility, for example, but just allowing emotions to come up in whatever way that might be. The tools that I use as a therapist that you can also use yourself is emotional freedom technique. So this is also known as EFT tapping. You're tapping on different acupressure points of the body. This is the same energy system as acupuncture, but instead of using needles to stimulate those points, we're just using our fingertips. So this is something you can do at home on your own, or you can work with one-to-one with a therapist. And what you're doing is you're tapping on the points of your body while using language to express how you're feeling. So you might literally be tapping and just being like, I feel really shit today. I feel really angry about this. I feel really whatever it is. And you're accepting those emotions. So instead of, you're not tapping to try and, it does release the emotions, but you're tapping to get in tune with the emotions and allow them to come up and be released by accepting them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, we just released an episode on the 24th of August, everything you need to know about EFT while you're trying to conceive. We include that as part of our couples coaching program. It's such a really quick way
it's just so good, isn't it? It's just so good.
Yeah, and then move it out. And I just think of that can't crying thing with that. I have a favorite holiday movie called The Holiday. And with Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet, who's like, I don't want to cry. She's like, I can't cry. And so for me, I'm not a crier, although I can cry. Like I'll cry at movies and if, things happen, my default emotion is not like crying buckets of tears. My default is, kicking the wall and getting pissed off.
Yeah.
So it's going underneath that. There's a cool episode for people to check out too, is Embracing Your Feminine Fire. And it is with Alexandra Roxo. And she talks about like the movement piece, moving your body. And then, I don't know, something about her voice. She actually it's on Insight Timer. This exercise she has is like 40 minutes or so, but it's really cool. And you're moving your body. And then she's like, just get the tears out. And I'm like, the tears are coming out. They just, because it's stuck in there. Even a quote saying, we're the only species or animal that can cry. There is like shame. It can be shame or weakness, these unquote unquote, associated with that. But really it's very cathartic and to get that stuff out of you. And then like you're saying with a little child who will cry and then move on, whereas we don't cry. We kick a wall and we move on.
Yeah.
And we're yelling at someone so it just keeps, piling and piling and piling on top of each other, on top of all the emotions.
With crying, you're getting that release of oxytocin. So when you cry, you literally then getting an oxytocin, feel-good hormones, they kick at the end, which is why even though if you feel kind of, emotionally depleted after crying and maybe you're, snotty and puffy, but you do get that oxytocin, which is why you feel better when you've cried, because it's the little reward that your body is giving you to tell you, yes, this was a good thing to do it again next time.
Get it out. And that dance, what was the name of the dance that you do?
So it's Koya. So it's Qoya. And obviously at the minute, because of lockdown, there are people, doing Zoom classes and things. So it is like a class that there are particular moves that you do for some of it, and then some of it is free dance. But the instructor is guiding you through. So Kate Taylor from Practical Magic is the lady who did our class. Yeah, it's really beautiful technique, especially if you don't naturally dance. If you're not the type of person who normally puts music on and dances around your kitchen, it's quite good, because I've always been the type of person who does dance around the kitchen, but I decided to do it for the course because I had some ladies who were kind of like, oh no, that's not something I would do. And I was like, well, come to the class and you're in your living room, no one can see you, you're in your own private space, but we're obviously doing it all together on an allotted time. And they said it was just such an amazing way, because part of it you're really getting in touch with if you need to release anger or release sadness, and then there's other dances you would do to obviously sort of tune in with abundance and joy. And it's just another way to really connect with ourselves, rather than everything being the sort of mental or how can I release emotions by thinking about them or talking about them or tapping them through. It's like, well, yeah, move your body and just get yourself feeling good and get yourself having that adrenaline and oxytocin kick.
Yeah, I personally, I don't necessarily dance around the house, but if it's like I hit a dance floor, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm like, I stick out like a sore thumb. Like I'm not a great dancer, but I do enjoy it. And I usually, if I get out there, you can't get me off the dance floor, but definitely more of like people make fun of my awkward. My husband's always like, you look like from Seinfeld, or he always makes to bring up that one with Elaine doing her foot dance and whatever. But yeah, like it is being able to get that stuff out in a fluid way. And yeah, as you say, almost like the animal side of things, where you're be able to move it through you, so it's not stuck in you. And then what about, I also heard about other, I'm not sure if you heard of these ones, 5 Senses. They do a similar thing. I think they had them in LA and New York City classes similar to that, where you just basically go and shake it all out. So, are there any resources, a book, a website, an app, a documentary, anything you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, so there's a fantastic article on mindbodygreen.com entitled Can Trauma Be Stored in the Body? It's a really in-depth article that talks about what happens to emotions and trauma in our body, and talks about various different ways, some of which we've covered today, ways to release. That's really interesting. And then the film The Connection by Shannon Harvey. So she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. She's a journalist and filmmaker, and she went around the world interviewing different health professionals on the mind-body link and how how mind-body-spirit, or rather how mind and spirit are sort of missed out in most medical arenas. And it's fascinating. And she actually interviews Dr. Alice Domar, who runs the Infertility Center in Houston. And it's absolutely fascinating. So I saw this while I was trying to conceive, and you can go on their website and watch, and then people do screenings as well, and online screenings as well as in person. But yeah, it's a fantastic film, and it interviews lots of different people who've had various different health issues, including infertility, and how you can use the mind and the body to help release that stress. So highly recommend that one. It's called The Connection.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, but I'm pretty sure I've seen Alice Domar's clip from the movie, so I recommend it to people. But it's amazing she's a Harvard researcher and studied this for over 20 years and doing mind-body groups, and a lot of the things that we're talking about today she includes in her group. And 50% of the women that do the mind-body side of things go on to get pregnant within 6 months, and then within 2 years, I think over 90% of them become a mother somehow. So it's key to really look at these things. And if you don't want to look at it, even more key to look at it. Don't run away.
I was really interested. I was like, oh, what's the end of that sentence? If you don't want to look at it, was, oh, what? Look at it. I was like, I love that. Yes, it's like, if you don't want to look at it even closer.
Even more. Yeah. Same with the meditation. When you're like, I don't have any time for meditation. Well, those are the kind of people that actually need it even more. Yeah, for sure.
Meditate twice as much.
Okay. So success story, anything you'd like to share with us?
Yes. So when I was thinking about giving a real example of how this sort of plays in with infertility. So I had a client who was sent to me by her acupuncturist, actually. Acupuncturist really felt that there was an emotional block in her womb area. And so with acupuncturists, looking at the energetic lines throughout the body. And she was like, go and see if there's something emotional blocking this area, because she had the scan, she had the physical, and I think there was inflammation in that area, and she was told it was highly unlikely that she could get pregnant naturally. And so this was secondary infertility she was going through. So I was working with her as a therapist. So we were using cognitive hypnotherapy, emotional freedom technique, and neuro-linguistic programming to get to the root of what was going on for her body physically. And it turned out she'd experienced a traumatic experience in her teens that then got linked in her mind to when she gave birth to her son. She'd had a traumatic birth with her son. So basically her body was in this state of, it's not safe to get pregnant, because it is not safe for me to give birth again, because it was very similar to the experience in her teens. And during this session, I'll read a quote direct from her because that made more sense. I was having uncontrollable feelings of anxiety at different points in the day, every day, and I couldn't figure out what was causing them. Sleep wasn't good, and I felt like I was in a bad cycle, and trying out lots of things to help, but nothing was getting to the crux of the issue. I felt a shift during the session, not only emotionally, but also physically. I felt a huge release of tension that I'd been carrying in my hips and belly. I felt like jelly. The shifts in thinking were remarkable. I feel so much more positive and happy in my self. I feel transformed, like the old me, and more resilient. I felt safe to open up and not pushed to say anything I wasn't comfortable in saying. Looking back, the anxiety I was experiencing was really deliberating, and I didn't really realize how much anxiety I was experiencing on a daily basis. So she was experiencing anxiety, and she didn't realize that it was because she was trying to conceive again, and her body, because of the trauma of the example in her teens and the birth, her body was telling her, it is not safe for you to be trying to conceive. So she was basically suffering low-lying anxiety all of the time, and then peaks in anxiety. And it was when it got to ovulation, she wasn't sleeping. She was basically waking up and being wide awake in the middle of the night around ovulation. And she couldn't sort of put two and two together. She was like, well, I know I really want a second baby, so what is going on? So we were using the EFT to help release the trauma from her body. And it just absolutely fascinates me that if we obviously hadn't looked at, her acupuncturist was obviously looking at one thing and her doctor was looking at another thing, and we were looking at the emotion sides of it. And it's about, like you said, having that mind, body, spirit team of people to really cover every area, because why would you not cover every area?
Right.
Instead of just going down one route, there are all these different avenues to, to get to the solution that you need. And she actually got pregnant naturally the following month.
Oh,
and even though that wasn't a keeper, she unfortunately miscarried, but she got pregnant when she hadn't been able to get pregnant for, I think it was 2 years. She'd been trying. And it just shows you the difference that these techniques can make.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And you have a free thoughts activation process pack for people. They can get that at embracefertility.co.uk/start here. I'll have the link in the bio. What would, in the show notes, I should say, what can they expect there?
So this is a pack I've put together with really simple but powerful tools to get you started with really connecting to the mind-body link. So you get a 4-minute reset button MP3. So this you just save on your phone, and whenever you're just feeling like, whenever you're not feeling A-okay, just stick this on. It's under 4 minutes, and it takes your body out of stress response and back into relaxation response very, very quickly. And it's full of little acupressure techniques, NLP techniques, mindfulness techniques that you can pick out and use each of them individually. So once you've listened to it a few times, you can then do little bits that just take a few seconds. You've then got the heart anchor technique, which is a beautiful 10-minute meditation, which connects you with feelings of joy, gratitude, and peace, which people can be so out of touch with. Well, going through infertility and just feel like, I can't even remember the last time I just felt happy, or I just felt peaceful, or just felt relaxed. So this guides you to tune in with when you felt like that in the past. So we'll get you to look back on previous memories. And because our mind doesn't know the difference between the past or now, there's only now for our mind. By remembering a time in the past when you felt very, 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 very relaxed, it allows your body to feel very, very relaxed now. And the same with feeling very happy or feeling very peaceful. And then you also get the emotions game, which is a little ebook talking about question you can ask yourself when you're feeling low, when you're feeling angry, whenever you're feeling any of those emotions that we would label as negative. Ask yourself a question: what thought would allow me to feel better now? And move up. So I've done it like a little board game that you move your little person up the steps of the emotions game. And this is something, it's so, so simple. It's that tiny concept, but seeing it as the board game as well, you've got that visual reminder that at any given moment, you can choose to go up or down that emotional board game. And there are ways you can, obviously you want to keep heading up and feeling better and better rather than spiraling down and down, which is what can happen especially if we're suffering from anxiety or depression. You keep moving down when you want to be moving up and getting yourself. As soon as you go past that, to that neutral line, your body comes out of stress response and back into rest and relaxation response.
I love it. So check it out at embracefertility.co.uk. And thanks so much for coming on, Naomi, and sharing your words of wisdom on this topic. It was really informative, and thanks for all the work that you are doing as well.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's been lovely.
Yeah. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. Hey there, I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers, and really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FABfertile.com, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FABfertile.com, and click on Book a Free Call. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you are a U.S. resident, text Fertile, FERTILE, to 55444. You'll be prompted to enter your email address, and you'll receive our fertility, Yoga Download. In this 20-minute intro video, we focus on a calming and peaceful practice to connect back to our heart. These simple yoga poses can help quiet negative thoughts and make you feel more in control. Download it now and get started today. For U.S. residents, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 55444. For non-U.S. residents, go to Yoga Freebie, FREEBIE, to access your special gift. That's yogafreebie.com to access the free fertility yoga download. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.